Broken Age, the game that started the Kickstarter craze, the game that got Tim Schafer back to his origins, the point-and-click adventure genre. After over 3 years of a rocky development, after being divided into 2 parts, is finally complete. And it's a big letdown for me. It's the worst game I have played from Schafer. It has everything that doesn't work in classic adventure games, combined with a script that, while well-intentioned, just bounces around going nowhere for 8 hours until it just finishes in an underwhelming and rushed ending. You play as 2 different characters, Shay, a young boy stuck in a spaceship looking for a new home, being overprotected by a computer who keeps making him repeat the same routine, the same childish pretend missions every day. He longs for a more exciting life, which he gets when he meets a mysterious man dressed in a wolf costume named Marek, who offers him a chance to save innocent lives in an intergalactic war. The other one is Bella, a teenager who lives in a town exclusively dedicated to bakery. She's about to be sacrificed to a giant monster to stop it from destroying the town and wants to find a way to fight it instead of just becoming lunch to a Lovecraftian nightmare. The first act starts well enough. There's this interesting juxtaposition in both sides of the story, between the innocent setting and the creepy undertone that permeate the length of this first part. The fact that Shay has grown up in a ship, devoid of any human contact, constantly being watched and protected from anything dangerous or exciting, surrounded by the creepy smiles of inanimate objects, robots, and these creatures made out of wool that speak in a very cheery and high-pitched voice. It's really easy to believe how Shay would immediately trust Marek, despite the fact that he's creepy and obviously not trustworthy. I mean, he's literally in wolf's clothing. In Bella's story, on the other hand, the fact that an evil, gigantic monster from beyond devours maidens is not treated with fear or apprehension. Everyone is just happy as hell. Everyone thinks being eaten by Riley is the greatest thing that could ever happen to you, including the sacrifices themselves. The only one who seems to realize how screwed up this whole situation is Bella and her grandfather. In fact, telling anyone they should fight the creature results in either disbelief or straight-up mockery.
But first, can I ask just one more time? Honey, why don't we just kill Mog Chothra?
Hear, hear! Oh, honey.
The strongest point is the end of Act 1, when it's revealed the connection between the 2 stories. I will admit, it caught me by surprise, even though there were enough clues to figure it out. It left a lot of unanswered questions that honestly left me very hopeful for Act 2. But when the second act finally released over a year later, I honestly couldn't remember almost anything about Act 1, other than the ending. And it was replaying it when I realized why. The game is boring. Really boring. Adventure games by nature have a much slower pace than almost any other game genre, and this game reinforces it at every turn. The art style, while beautiful, is soothing. The music, although well composed, is also relaxed and slow paced. Voice acting is... well, everyone feels like they just woke up, uninteresting and lethargic. Especially this guy.
I could conceivably release the extra energy out of the targeting iris, but that would only produce a powerful weaponized... well, heck, let's just call a death ray a death ray.
Yay!
Yay, death ray. How do you make death rays sound so goddamn boring? And that is almost a theme to this game. Nothing feels exciting. Everything is so low-key that it's hard to concentrate on what you are doing. In a long play session, it can almost put you to sleep. Puzzles are also very basic in Act 1, very much like a traditional adventure. Pick up object, find where to use it, and that's it. The interface is simplified from most traditional adventures. You can't even look at an object. I know it was kind of pointless, but those small things helped flesh out the world and the characters. The intention was obviously to simplify gameplay, but honestly, this is just too much. Adventure games had already been streamlined enough. This just feels like way too bare bones and uninteresting. But the worst part is Act 2. The good things that the first act offered are gone. This feeling of uncomfortable beauty is substituted by a constant and kind of patronizing exposition. Characters need to explain concepts and lore about this world that suddenly has grown way out of proportion for what was supposed to be a small game, and some things just don't make any sense. You discovered during the second part that Shay's computer wasn't actually a computer. It was his flesh and blood mother that remained constantly hidden from him during the first act. That she locked herself and would never allow him to see her in the flesh. What kind of overprotective mother would do that? I mean, during Act 1, Shay talks to her as a computer all the time.
Okay, computer. What's the big emergency?
I wish you'd call me Mom, sweetie.
I wish you called me Captain, computer.
Doesn't this concern her at all? His son has chosen to completely forget about her and thinks she's a machine, when it's only been a couple of years since the last time he saw her. Does mental instability not count as dangerous? Just showing up once would be enough. And Shay and his mom's relationship is central to the character. This is not something that you can just ignore. This points to what I think is the biggest problem. Act 1 seems to have been written and finished before Act 2 was even started. Or perhaps their initial idea had to be cut, I don't know. But the inconsistencies between both acts are glaringly obvious. The game suddenly feels unfocused and messy. What used to be a story about growing up and facing danger is suddenly about the clash between two civilizations that can't share the same planet. It's so disconnected from the first act that if it wasn't for the fact that the art style and characters remain the same, I could almost swear that it is a different game. Also, the design of the puzzles seems to have changed between Act 1 and 2, to the point where I actually needed a pen and paper to solve some of them. Some of them are not even hard, they are just nonsensical. The knot puzzle really got on my nerves. At one point I got stuck and couldn't figure out a solution to one of them. I actually had to consult a walkthrough, only to read that the solution was in the other character's story. Well, considering I didn't have to do anything like that in the first act, forgive me for not figuring out by myself. During Act 2 this happens several times, and considering that these characters never meet during gameplay, I have to ask, what's the in-universe explanations for their psychic powers? I was honestly expecting one, and there isn't. So I can only assume that it is a completely out-of-place fourth wall break, for a game where nothing like that feels appropriate. This is one example, but many things during Act 2 feel underdeveloped or come out of nowhere, while characters spend all of their time trying to explain what's going on. How this game was all along about genetically modified race of beings that live beyond the wall, creating an idyllic society that has somehow lost the ability to reproduce or lacks enough genetic diversity to sustain itself, and must therefore send airships disguised as monsters every 14 years to kidnap young girls from what they consider impure or diseased terrains to keep their society going. And all of this is revealed in a couple of conversations in about 10 minutes to only one of the characters. It's an extremely weak way to explain the plot of your game. It really feels like the developers figured out a cool plot twist and had to build a game and a story around it. It's contrived, terribly paced, and very unengaging. And considering who the author is, this is even more surprising. Broken Age is beautiful. There's no denying that. The game looks and sounds great, except for the boring voice acting. It's technically very polished, but under all that polish, there is a perfect example of everything that's wrong with adventure games, what killed them in the first place. Nonsensical puzzles, bad storytelling, and unmemorable characters, and just a boring game. What should have been at least a homage to what adventure games had to offer, just ended up being a callback to all the things that made this one proud genre so unpopular.